Biomechanical Analysis of a Basketball Free Throw by Fabiana Ferreira. Phase 1. Preliminary movements. First, feet are placed shoulder-width apart on the free throw line. For a right-handed shooter like myself, the left foot is either beside or slightly behind the right foot in a staggered stance. Common preliminary movements include taking several dribbles with the shooting hand, ensuring that fingers are relaxed and the wrist is loose. The shooter grabs the ball with both hands and spreads their fingers for more control of the ball. The wrist is an extension to provide support for the ball and the propelling force for the shot. Phase 2. Backswing. Movements that occur during the crouch and preparation of the shot. The ball is held by the shooter at waist level. The dominant shooting hand is placed behind the ball, and the non-shooting hand is on the side of the ball and slightly behind center. The shoulder is parallel to the body at an angle of approximately 0 degrees. The knees are then flexed at an angle of 90, and the trunk is flexed at an angle between 60 to 70 degrees from the vertical. The ball is raised up to chin level using shoulder flexion, and the trunk approaches the vertical position by trunk extension. Since the trunk accounts for 50% of the body weight, acceleration of the trunk upwards results in significant force downwards to the floor, increasing the flexion of the knee and dorsiflexion of the ankle. Phase 3. Force-producing movements. Movements that produce upwards and forwards forces to project the ball includes leg and trunk extension and the shooting arm. As previously mentioned, the ball is held in front of the body, with the dominant shooting hand behind the ball and the left hand to the side and underneath the ball. This phase begins when the trunk has reached the vertical position and the ball is at shoulder level and the knees are experiencing maximal flexion. The initial force-producing movements are the extension of the knees and hips, followed by elevation of the ball by shoulder flexion, as well as an elbow extension and wrist flexion. Analysis of the movements previously listed are as follows. As the upper arms are raised to the horizontal, parallel to the floor, the elbow flexion is increased to around 120 degrees. In this phase, as the ball is raised, the wrist experiences extreme hyperextension, fingers pulled backwards towards the face, to maximize the range of flexion, which is approximately 54 degrees. As the ball reaches the forehead level, the upper arm reaches a more vertical position through a shoulder flexion. This shoulder flexion provides the upward force to power the shot and increases the range of motion in the elbow extension and flexion of the wrist. The shoulder flexion range of motion is 82 degrees. Phase 4. The critical instant. The instant in which the ball is released. Note, after this phase, nothing the shooter does will affect the flight of the ball. At the release, the trunk and legs have reached full extension, and the trunk should be vertical and not leaning forward or backward during the release and follow-through of the shot. The shooting shoulder is flexed at an angle of 140 to 150 degrees. In this position, the shoulder is almost vertical relative to the ceiling. The elbow achieves a full extension, as the full contribution of the elbow joint is crucial to the flight of the ball and the success of a free throw. When the ball is released at the peak angular velocity, there will be a slight flexion in the shooting elbow. This occurs mid-range and not at full extension. At the release, the wrist is in mid-flexion, which is the position between full extension and full flexion. At this point, the hand is moving at the maximum velocity. The non-shooting hand should let go of the ball just before the instant of release, so the shooter can be in control for as long as possible. Phase 5. Arc of the shot. The ball leaves the shooter's hand in projectile motion that proceeds in a parabolic high or low arc towards the basket. A shot with a high arc generates a greater vertical velocity, which is approximately between 6 and 6.3 meters per second, with an angle of release of 50 to 55 degrees. Upon release of the ball, the muscles in the shooting arm are relaxed, and only the muscles required to project the ball are contracted. However, all other muscles are loose. The body remains vertical during the release to ensure the optimal vertical velocity of the ball. Phase 6. Follow-through. All joints continue to move to their maximum range of motion following the release of the ball. The hips and knees are fully extended and the ankles are plantar flexed. The shoulder remains flexed at an angle of 140 to 150 degrees. The trunk is rotated away from the shooting hand to align the shooting shoulder with the basket. After the ball escapes the hand, the elbow joint reaches a total extension, and the wrist is fully flexed. The extension of the elbow and wrist flexion provide upward force and backspin of the ball, which stabilizes the ball on its projectile path towards the hoop. Weaknesses of my technique. The first weakness of the free throw I performed is the shot had a low arc. The low arc of the shot is due to insufficient flexion of the shoulder joint or the trunk, or the elbow was not fully extended upon the release of the ball. My second weakness for the free throw I shot was the lack of backspin in the flight of the ball. Insufficient backspin may cause the ball to follow a sideways flight away from the root to the net or rebound off the backboard very hard. Thank you for listening to my presentation.